You're listening to the Dr. Joe Show here with Erin Reed, talking about, well, there are fewer than half as many living creatures on the planet from 1970. We have growing wealth disparity, rising tensions around the world between nuclear powers, but we're the number one problem in the world, obviously, we can all agree, wokeness.
How did that happen, Tom?
I don't know, but I know that it entraps the minds of so many children. Like millions of children will transition and then regret it. They all, like 99% regret it, right, Erin?
Oh yeah. All of these millions and millions, more than we actually have kids, are detransitioning.
That's how big the problem is. That's how big the problem is.
It is. It's pretty stunning.
Yeah, I appreciate the cynicism in this and the sarcasm, but really it really is an issue that people worry about this. And, where does that come from, Erin? What do you think?
Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit about this. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I do personally know detransitioners. And I think that as an active transgender person who talks about transgender legislation, transgender rights, and acceptance, self-acceptance, this is something that people are afraid of. They're terrified that, what if I detransition? What if my son, transitions and detransitions? Will they be damaged permanently? Are there going to be negative effects? And I want to talk a little bit about this because I have some personal experience with this as well. Number one is that detransition or desistance, depending on which term you use, desistance is usually used with kids and transgender teenagers, whereas detransition is usually used with transgender adults who have transitioned fully and then detransitioned. The number one thing to realize is that it is relatively rare. There's a ton of studies out there. They generally range between 1% to 8%. But the other thing is that the reason why people do it, and the reason why people do it I know the studies behind this, but I also know my personal experiences with this, which do line up with the studies. So often the reason people do it is because they're afraid. They're afraid of their family. They're afraid of their peers. They're afraid of their workplace. They're afraid that things are going to get worse for them. People get harassed. People get treated very meanly. And a lot of times whenever that happens, they'll say, I need to just step back, go back to this old life. It was easier that way. At least I didn't have to get called names in public. And there's so much that goes into this, okay? Because it's like all of the things that help a transgender person essentially exist in society without being harassed more. So like hair removal, voice therapy, these things, they cost so much money. And it's gated behind so many gatekeepers. And whenever you think about that and then think about this argument being used against all transgender people, all they're doing is trying to fuel that fire. They're trying to create a more toxic environment to transition into. They're trying to make it more scary so that people do feel afraid to do it. I will say personally that it was a very long time that I didn't consider myself this, but in recent years I consider myself having detransitioned. But whenever I was 12 to 16 years old, anytime that I was not at school, I essentially presented as myself. I was online, I video chatted, I did voice chatting with people. I knew who I was. I 100% knew who I was back then. And I considered myself transgender as a teenager. And I stopped considering myself that for quite some time because it was such a toxic environment. It was such a scary environment. And there was no way as a teenager back in the 1990s, early 2000s, that it was even a possibility for me. And so I just want to close off this part of like my personal views on this by saying, I think that the stigma around detransition decreases whenever you have a decreasing stigma around transitioning. Stop making it out to be a huge deal, and you're not going to see the same worry about detransitioning as well.
It's the same thing as the suicide rates. Yeah. Another big argument against the very existence of trans people is that, oh, well, they have such a high suicide rate, 43%. Well, why do you think? Idiot.
Is that a true number, Tom?
41% attempt something. It's definitely in the double digits succeed.
Wow.
It's suicide is such a prevalent issue within the transgender community, and it all centers around acceptance and affirmation and access to care. It's terrifying. Like this is something that we contend with. And this is why whenever we talk about these issues around like pronoun usage and name usage, legal name changes, access to hormone therapy, this isn't like just some sort of cosmetic thing. Like this is something that has a real world direct life and death impact on so many people. And you don't understand it unless you've experienced it. You know, it's hard to even put into words the sheer trauma that you experience as a transgender person, not being affirmed, being the opposite of affirmed, being stigmatized, demonized, being denied care. And so this is a big deal for me because I do know people, many transgender people that have taken their lives. I've known them personally. I think every single transgender person, especially if you're active in the community, can probably name off a dozen people that they know that have taken their lives. And it's not because they have transitioned. It is almost universally because their parents disowned them. They lost their job. Their best friends no longer want to talk to them. And that's what I'm trying to fix. You know, that's why I'm out there. That's why I'm talking to people. That's why I'm talking to you. That's why I'm sharing these resources. That's why I'm active in the legislative fights. It's because the more you can turn down the temperature around transgender people, the easier it is for us to exist without feeling like we're a danger to ourselves.
Yeah. You know, as a psychiatrist, one of the questions that I ask people who are suicidal is, do you want to die or do you wish you had a different life? And they wish they had a different life. They wish they were accepted and valued. And when we're not as human beings, sometimes we just give up. So I really hope people are listening to this. We can do something very different. You know, you know someone in your life, listeners, who may really need your help and really need your value to help them.
Stretch the